Hey guys, DJI just officially released their new Mini 3 Pro drone. It was of course more heavily leaked than a Kardashian sex tape, and there was very little we didn't know going into the official launch. But a new drone from the biggest consumer drone manufacturer on the planet is always a big deal. I just had a look and the big name tubers have already rushed to gush about the Mini 3 and make saccharine, criticism-light videos of themselves riding one wheels whilst reading the bullet points from DJI's marketing materials. Who needs to pay for advertising when you have these guys? And so, as I did with the Mavic 3, I thought I'd take a look at the Mini 3, consider its advantages and disadvantages, and attempt to provide some balanced context to the well-oiled DJI hype machine that always fires up whenever they push a new product out of their Shenzhen doors. So, my friends, is the Mini 3 Pro or poo? Now, as soon as I saw the spec sheet for this drone, I immediately thought they should actually name it the DJI Creator, because it's undoubtedly the content creation community that is being targeted here. Everything about it has been designed to appeal to the van, boat, bike and four-wheel drive influencer crowd. Basically, if you're shit in a chemical toilet, then this drone is targeted at you. Indeed, on their Mini 3 product page, they even directly reference the target audience for saying, "For creators on the move." Now, believe it or not, being a content creator is actually an aspirational thing these days, and so it's a genius bit of marketing which will make the drone appeal to people who merely aspire to be globe-trotting, chemical toilet using content creators just as much as those who really are. Alright, let's get into the key features of this pint-sized drone. Now obviously the first key thing that will make this drone an appealing option is that size. As someone who used to lug a Phantom 4 through the national parks in its suitcase-sized polystyrene case, I can fully understand the attractions of a drone that's both small and light. And when I look back at the dimensions of that old Phantom 4, I reckon it felt like lugging an upright piano through the woods, compared to my current drone, the godlike Mavic 2 Pro. The Mini 3 Pro is just 14.5 centimeters tall, 9 centimeters wide and 7 centimeters tall. It will take up very little space in a backpack, but it'll also easily fit in a day bag. DJI's promotional videos show it fitting into a pocket, but I'm not sure I'd like hot drone battery nestling centimetres from my family jewels. I'd say that the Mini 3 is even small enough to pack as a contingency option for when you have no concrete plans for flying some aerial video or photography, but you like to be prepared for any unexpected opportunities. Now, it bears mentioning that the size of the Mini 3 is actually a negative attribute when it comes to flying in adverse weather conditions, because it'll be much easier to blow about in the wind than its heavier stablemates with their more powerful motors. In fact, some of the test footage I've seen shows the Mavic 3 failing to make any forward progress in a strong wind. So if you're a content creator that regularly flies in less than ideal weather conditions, you should definitely consider looking at one of the heavier DJI drones. So there's the small footprint and then there's the weight. And as this is in the Mini line of DJI drones, it weighs under 250 grams with the standard battery. And I'd say that this was a far more important physical specification than its dimensions. Sub 250 gram drones have become something of a global category that excludes them from things like licensing, taxation and flight restrictions in many countries. Here in Australia, sub 250 gram drones flown for fun do not need registering and are not taxed. If you're flying for commercial purposes, and a YouTube channel you earn money from is considered commercial incidentally, then here in Australia you need an operator license. But the annual $40 fee is waived for sub 250 gram. Furthermore, here in Australia, the restrictions regarding flying near airfields are greatly relaxed for sub 250. If you want the path of least resistance, particularly if you're the sort of person that flies to lots of different countries and makes videos there, then sub 250 gram is absolutely the way to go. Now, previously the downside to very small drones, or micro RPAs as the authorities insist on calling them, was that they had inferior cameras and sensors. The first generation of sub 250 gram drones had mediocre video quality rendered at low bit rates and resolutions. It was okay for a bit of walking to the place B-roll, but low resolution, noisy and hard to grade. Now, no doubt the release of sub 250 gram drones from companies like Autel with tasty looking video lit a bit of a fire under DJI's arse and inspired them to look again at their own terminally boring hardware. And look again, they did. The Mini 3 Pro has 4K at 60 FPS and 1080p at 120. More importantly, there's a far better sensor in there, which at 48 megapixels has triple the density of the original Mini, and also triple the bitrate at 150 megabytes per second. So far, so good. The new camera undoubtedly benefits from DJI's purchase of Hasselblad, but you will note that it does not have that famous H on the front and is not a Hasselblad camera like the Mavic 2 Pro and Mavic 3. So not that Pro then. The Mini 3 Pro sensor is also 8-bit and not 10-bit. I know we're talking about a relatively cheap drone and one that weighs less than 250 grams, but the difference between 8-bit video and 10-bit video is like night and day. And from the footage I've seen here on YouTube, I think it definitely looks 8-bit. The question is that 8-bit video good enough for the type of use cases this drone is undoubtedly going to be flown for? Do you really need billions of colours to capture you and your content creating other half in a Christ-like pose on a mildly attractive hill as the drone circles you? Do you need 10-bit video to film your badly converted builder's transit van slopping disinfectant out of your chemical toilet as the van bounces down a secluded track to a car park where you intend to illegally camp overnight? Do you need 10-bit video to capture your bikini-wearing influencer girlfriend's peach-like arse disappearing into a glassy blue wave? On balance, I'd say 8-bit gets the job done, but if you're a picky bastard like me, you'll definitely notice a difference between the quality of your Mini 3 footage versus any other camera you have that shoots in 10-bit. The Mini 3 does shoot in HDR mode by default using a dual ISO system at frame rates up to 30 FPS. What this means is that it records 2 light readings for each pixel on the sensor and then combines them in order to render a higher dynamic range. That means it will perform better in low light settings. But if you've ever shot with a 10-bit drone, you will definitely notice the difference, particularly at sunrise and sunset. If you're going to put a Pro badge on a drone, then I do think you need to include a proper log video profile. Log, in case you're not someone who regularly edits videos, is a flat grey looking colour profile which is specifically designed to be graded in post. It's a bit like the raw photo format for video in that it's designed to capture as much light and colour information as possible, but not to process it in camera in any way. There is no log video profile on the Mini 3 Pro. It does have a cine-like profile, and while this is a compromise, it's better than nothing. The camera also has a fixed 1.7 aperture. That wide open aperture means it's going to be better in low light situations than the Mini 2, but it also means you'll undoubtedly need a set of ND filters if you plan on filming in sunny locations in the middle of the day, like pretty much every influencer on the planet would. If you wanted to use the Mini 3 for photography, then the fact that it's a fixed aperture will be limiting because you won't be able to stop down to reduce the amount of light hitting the sensor without filters. The larger sensor in the Mini 3 should mean you get good photographs, but the examples I've seen, even those on DJI's own site, display some chromatic aberration. Sample images also look less focused on the left side of the image and have interpolation artifacts when zoomed in. It's enough for me to suggest that if photography is your main focus, then you should look elsewhere. One feature of the Mini 3 that I think is great is the newly designed gimbal. This gimbal, in combination with a cutaway section in the nose of the main body and slightly longer front legs, means you can film pointing upwards to about 60 degrees. This isn't a new idea, of course. The hugely underrated Parrot Anafi had a full 180 range of vertical motion and was released nearly 5 years ago. Having a greater upward tilt will mean the drone can record more of the sky than was previously possible when shooting 360 degree sphere images. The other feature of that gimbal is that it can be rotated 90 degrees in order to shoot vertical video or portrait orientation photos. This is a cool feature too, although like the increased range of motion, it's not new. The original Mavics had this feature, if memory serves me correctly. That vertical orientation is clearly designed to appeal to people who only ever upload their videos to TikTok. But my first thought was that it would greatly improve panoramic photographs since you can shoot vertically across the frame. And the other big change in the Mini 3 over the original Mini and the Mini 2 is of course sensors. Forward, backward and downward sensors in fact. Combine those with the APAS 4 system and you have a much more capable drone than previous Minis, and one which will be much more forgiving of the kind of novice drone pilots who are likely to purchase a Mini in the first place. The Mini 3 can also be purchased with the new DJI RC controller. This is modelled after the DJI RC Pro, but is not, of course, anywhere near as capable. However, since this costs only $100 on top of the price of the Mini 3, I think you'd be absolutely bonkers not to get one. Not having to dick around with your smartphone and be ready to put the drone up in the air quickly and easily is a no-brainer. The RC controller has a fairly tame processor in it, and therefore you shouldn't expect the same levels of responsiveness you get from your smartphone or the RC Pro controller. The reports I've seen also suggest that battery life on the controller is quite limited, and you'll get through about 3 drone batteries worth of flights at best from one charge of that controller. Alright, let's talk about pricing. Here in Australia, if you opt for the bundle with the controller and the, in my view, essential 2-year DJI Care Refresh deal, then it comes in just under $1,500. If you want the bare bones package without any controller or Care Refresh, it comes in just under that $1,000 mark. The only real competition for this drone is the Autel Evo Nano Plus, which costs about the same as the Mini 3 Pro. They have very similar features and very similar cameras, but for my money, the Autel drone shoots better looking video. However, the Autel also has been affected by obstacle avoidance bugs, which make it hard to recommend. I think Autel really shot themselves in the foot here. They had a drone with similar specs to the Mini 3 out months before it. Now, all things considered, I think the Mini 3 is a solid purchasing option, either for anyone that's looking to get into drones or for content creators looking to reduce the amount of weight they carry around in their sponsored backpacks. But let's not kid ourselves that this is a budget drone. The Mini 2 was $750 here in Australia with the basic controller, and you could feasibly have called that budget, but the Mini 3 with basic controller is $1,120. Yes, that's a $370 price rise. Not quite as bad as the Mavic 2 to Mavic 3 price hike, but still a sizable chunk of money for a drone positioned at the cheap end of the range. The bottom line is this: if video and photo quality is more important to you than portability, then you should look at any of the drones outside the current Mini range. My top tip would be to look again at the Air 2S. This has a full 1-inch sensor, 5.4K video at 30 FPS, 4K Ultra at 60 FPS, 150 megabytes per second bitrate, and crucially, 10-bit video with a full D-Log profile. It also has a full suite of sensors and is much more capable in stronger winds due to its increased weight and more powerful motors. Yes, it's slightly more expensive, but not staggeringly so. If you shop around, you can pick up the Air 2S for about 1,600 Australian dollars. And given that the Air series is next in line for an update, it's a great time to pick one up before DJI upgrades its specifications and its price tag. So that is the Mini 3 Pro. It's a solid release after the botched launch of the unfinished Mavic 3, and one that has created something of a stir among the chemical toilet crowd. DJI dominate the consumer drone market for good reason, and their products continue to sell well because they continue to come up with the goods. However, I do not believe, based on all the footage I've viewed and the sample photographs I've pixel peeped, that this drone is quite as good as the hype crowd would have you believe. In strong winds, it will turn into a kite. It has inferior 8-bit video, a pseudo HDR mode that you cannot disable at standard frame rates, no logged video profile, and average photo quality. It's also much more expensive than the Mini 2, and even if you didn't get the 2-year care refresh, and I think you'd be dumb if you didn't, and opted for the basic controller, the price tag will still be well over $1,000 here in Australia. It's not a shitty drone, it's just not the second coming of Christ in quadcopter form that some influencers would have you believe. Like the Action, OM and Pocket series of products, DJI are very clear on who their target audience is, and the Mini 3 is definitely a bullseye in terms of giving the content creating punters what they want, namely a half decent flying video camera with a bunch of cheesy automated flight modes that skirts most drone regulations and won't give you lower back pain. Are you going to get a Mini 3? Or do you plan to get another couple of years out of that Phantom 3 Advanced of yours? Do you value convenience over quality when it comes to video footage? Or are you saving up for an Arri Alexa or two? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, smash that like button if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing to my little channel for more content like this. Till the next time guys, ta-ta.